Do you have a comfortable income that funds your current expenses every month and your future adequately? Are your reserves growing on a trajectory where you know your life will be comfortable the rest of the way? This channel is for those of you more or less starting out to help you achieve those two goals. Over the last 45 years, I've had to learn lessons of managing money, both personally and professionally, and I want to save you some time. As the CFO for 4 cities, I've managed budgets and investment portfolios well over $100 million, taxpayer funds that are not allowed to lose a penny of principal, and I've taught others how to do it, those on my staff and those who followed in my shoes when I left. Budgeting and investing are two important tools that I'm very familiar with, and today I can share with you with 100% certainty from experience that one of the things that prevents people from getting ahead is failure to mature, both in their knowledge and how they apply it. It's easy to give people good news, to tell them you can solve their problems for them. But delivering bad news, honestly, is hard to do. I find it very hard to deliver the news that people are working against themselves. This channel is aimed at young adults, but I've also seen grown men who have the judgment of adolescents. I'm not trying to be insulting. I'm honestly trying to find what's helpful and instructive. Before I became a government CFO, I was a controller for a substance abuse prevention nonprofit. I was occasionally around middle-aged men in prison. I saw firsthand that maturity is not a number, it's not an age. People like you and me that made poor decisions hadn't been taught at an early age. The substance abuse counselors weren't teaching them about drug abuse so much as simply teaching them how to navigate the world properly as adults. Now, if we're being honest, it's easier to spot faults in others, but none of us have backbones of steel, committed to doing the right thing if it's hard, faced with easier options. Who wants to work when we can play? Who prefers vegetables to dessert? Why do people eat their vegetables? Usually because they know something that children don't know. Let me illustrate. You and I, when we were little, we wanted to become big. When we were children, we looked forward to being one of the big kids. Then we wanted to become a teenager. Once we could drive, we would be able to escape the house and go wherever we please. As teenagers, some of us found there were too many rules, and we longed for the day when we could really do whatever we wanted, whenever we wanted, with no rules. Oh, to no longer be treated like a child, but to be treated like an adult. However, once upon a time, there was a boy who, unlike most children, didn't want to grow up. You see, he was clever enough to realize that if he could stay a boy, he could avoid the responsibilities and challenges of adulthood. In a perpetual childhood, it's a world of adventure and freedom. Nothing but endless play. He could pretend, he could fly if he wanted to, he could play at fighting pirates and always win, and, because it really is built into all of us, he could be a leader among the smaller boys who needed someone to look up to, a leader who merely needed to be smarter, bolder, and more fearless. Peter Pan was written in 1902 by a Scottish novelist named J.M. Barrie. The story has been popular in remakes on stage and in film. My favorite stage adaptation has one of the most brilliant 3-word lines ever delivered. Cracks me up. Performed perfectly by the actor. Actually addressing the audience instead of the other characters on stage. The audience was behaving immaturely, booing the villain as the character makes his first entrance onto the stage. Imagine, audiences thought it was okay to boo. How rude, how childish. See for yourself.
Yo ho, the terrible Captain Hook. Ah! Oh, grow up.
The truth is, most of us do want to grow up, to be treated like an adult. God made us to leave the nest, to fly, metaphorically speaking. He made us to yearn for independence, freedom, and to stand on our own 2 feet. Don't you want to be treated with respect? The problem is, of course, that respect needs to be earned. And we don't want to spend all of our time working. We want to play, at least on the weekends. In today's day and age, you probably know some 30 or 40-year-old boys who still haven't grown up. I'm not talking about young men who still live in their parents' basement. This is a deeper thing. There was a time in America when boys around the age of 13 or so began their transition to adulthood. In some places, you see young men on farms and ranches who still do. But for most part, the path itself of growing up has taken a few wrong turns. Financial mentoring is largely not something that has been handed down from father to son. I loved my dad when he was alive, but he was unable to pass on financial wisdom to me. I had to learn through making mistakes, a lot of them. And even if he had, I might have rebelled. You see, growing up is a decision. It's up to you. And the truth is, most of us ignore the advice we're given when we're young. Trying to offer advice is not new. The Bible has a few things to say about growing up. In Paul's letter to the Colossians, he says, "So we have not stopped praying for you since we first heard about you. We asked God to give you complete knowledge of His will and to give you spiritual wisdom and understanding. Then the way you live will always honor and please the Lord, and your lives will produce every kind of good fruit. All the while you will grow as you learn to know God better and better." Money mistakes are almost always errors of judgment that involve either a failure to save, a failure to earn, a failure to prioritize properly, or just plain a lack of knowledge about how real life works. I think each of these is worth its own video, so please feel free to shop around my channel because I have touched on these topics and I will do more in the future. But underlying each of these problems, I think, is something none of us wants to do. Growing up is hard. None of us wants to do hard things if we don't want to, and none of us wants to forego pleasure if we don't have to. I'll offer some examples, and they may not fit you, but please do be on the lookout for things that you can actually do to lift yourself up with your own effort and planning. In Paul's letter to the Corinthians, you might recall that he said, "When I was a child, I spoke and thought and reasoned as a child, but when I grew up, I put away childish things." Now, the context of that verse is where he's talking about loving others, thinking of others, not just thinking of ourselves. So what's an example of things that we do to create a failure to save? One mistake is to show off, acquiring the external signs of success we think are expected. That's not thinking of others, that's comparing yourself to others. And it's about ourselves. And it's just human nature. But you rob yourself of your savings. Think of the times you wear your best clothes. Think of the things you find important to say to someone who hasn't seen you for a few years. And these days, are there things you find yourself feeling inadequate if you haven't bought? The phone you use, the gym you feel you need to belong to, the car you drive, the job you have. Those are all deceptions. You can have a plain phone, you can drive a basic car. Having a job at all is a blessing. And at your age, a gym membership is a luxury, not a necessity. Grow up. Stop showing off. Perhaps that's a harsh way of putting it. Some would call it caving to culture. I think that doesn't have sufficient impact, though it may be the same thing. I want you to consider that it takes both strength and humility to not do what others do. Instead, stand strong in humility, confident in yourself, and in the knowledge that you are in charge of your own life. So what's an example of things we do that keep us from earning more? One mistake is to avoid reaching for the next job or the next level of income. It's natural to become complacent, but for most of us, it's fear. Most of us get to a place where we fear rejection. The fear of applying for a job and not being invited to an interview is real. The fear of being interviewed is intimidating. And let's face it, writing a cover letter, updating a resume, filling in applications, and even putting in the time to search for job openings, all of those are hard work. And there are a million things that we would all rather do. So this is an example of needing to grow up and being willing to do a hard thing. I'm honestly not putting anyone down. There's no shame in having a good job and staying in it. However, if you're watching this video and you're wondering why you're not better off, it would be a disservice to not suggest you consider this one. Force yourself. When you do that, you take a step into adulthood and away from childhood. Prioritizing is where I see the biggest failures. We have no choice but to react to a crisis in our lives, and that can be a money drain. If you don't have savings, though, to navigate these problems of life, then you've not prioritized savings. And that simply means that you haven't put enough away for your future. Life is going to present you problems. Part of growing up is prioritizing savings instead of the things you can use your money for right now. Not only that, but growing up involves taking care of others. Someone near you can experience a crisis or a need, and grown-ups help others. Grown-ups give assistance. Now, they can only give so much, and at some point, some of the assistance needs to be allowing people to figure out their own problems, helping them grow, not fixing all their problems for them. But if you're young and you think all you're saving for is the things you want, then you'll find out that life is a lot more complex. You do have to save for the big ticket things in your life, but in addition to that, you have to save for your future, you have to save for contingencies and setbacks, and you have to take care of others, not just yourself. That means prioritizing now with a much bigger picture and a longer horizon. So just to recap, the purpose of this video was to encourage you to make a decision to continue growing, learning, gaining knowledge and experience, or as Captain Hook said, grow up. In the context of growing your financial strength, there are 4 areas I hope you will continue to find what helps you grow. First, save. You can't invest if you don't save, and you can't save if you don't budget. Consider pushing yourself to make your own budget and start building your savings. Second, earn. Your income is the economic engine that will propel your life. Consider making a decision that you'll push yourself to grow. Third, prioritize. You can budget or you can budget well. If all you do is spend every penny you earn and avoid debt, you'll never get ahead. Consider budgeting not just 1 month at a time, but decide to grow and consider farther out into the future. Fourth, learn how life works. We live in a world where things go wrong. Inflation is a fact of life, and if your earnings don't keep up, you fall behind. Your budget this year will not work next year. It's hard to save up for emergencies, and it's even harder to replace savings that you had to tap into. Consider planning on your plans not working out exactly and building financial wiggle room for yourself. Your life is your life, so there is no one video made by someone else that has the exact recipe you need. But you've probably heard that step 1 is admitting that you have a problem, that there is a problem, and one problem every one of us has is that we have to grow up. The good news is that if you look around, you can find people who want you to succeed. I hope you'll choose to hang around people who also want to grow up or are a little farther ahead. Decide you want to be a good influence for them as well. When you start thinking of others, not yourself, I think you'll be rewarded for living your life the way we're told the Lord intended. I hope this video has been helpful to you. Learn from others' wisdom and learn from others' experience. Committing to being financially successful in the future, you'll need to live a disciplined life, and it's entirely up to you. I'd appreciate your comments to help guide my further attempts at creating useful videos. I hope you thrive and prosper. I make these videos because I believe I succeed by helping you succeed. Thanks for watching.